Bright and early. I could go without these European games. I'm
Uh,
not a fan. Not my
they're
style.
purely, especially with all the time change and everything. I'm a little over it at this point, you know.
Yeah, in that game, you're trying to expand the game. You give them that kind of product, they're gonna ask you to take it back home. Like, and nobody's gonna want to watch that again. I mean,
Uh, Brutal.
jeez.
Well, we do have, for me, I'm kind of panicking a little bit because it's trade deadline time for most of my leagues. I know Dynasty you can kind of trade for whenever you want, but with my redraft, everyone's panicking. Everyone's sending me texts about crazy trades. I'm delusional, thinking I should take these, and I panic. And it's uh, it's certainly like crunch time right now if you want to make a big splash in your redraft leagues.
Yeah, you got a big one on the table, or you just kind of told them, nah, I don't think so.
I am trying to get AJ Brown and Kenneth Walker, and that's going to be a big haul for myself as well. So,
Say that's gonna take some pieces.
but
That's
he's in last place, so I'm trying to give him. He doesn't have a quarterback. He drafted Anthony Richardson, who doesn't play anymore, as we've discussed. So I'm trying to offer him a piece there and see what else I can do to sweeten the pot. But I may text him here in the middle before our show and see where he's at before Tuesday.
yeah. No, I mean it's tough time of year to make trades. You never know. Every league is so different. What it's going to
Yeah.
take to get a deal done. Every league mate is going to be very different on what they
and
think
then
is
and then
fair.
your other league mates get mad because you don't trade them, and so they're like, "What the hell? This is a terrible trade."
Yeah, and you put somebody on the trade block, then everybody thinks you're desperate to get rid of them, and they don't
Right.
want to give up anything for him. So it's definitely quite the art to make a trade, and it takes two to tango, but a lot of times it takes more than just two that are wanting to make a trade. You got to have the right pieces and the right
Right.
holes. A lot
Yeah.
of times it really just doesn't make sense because it's like, unless you've got a really deep league, it's hard to have a hole that's big enough that you're like willing to give up a solid starter to
Mhm.
fill, and then to find the right math to make it all work out back is tough. I mean, that's why we see so many more trades in Dynasty. You've got the draft picks to even
Right.
everything out. It's like, oh, that's not quite right. Why don't you throw in a third? Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Oh, let's
Yeah.
maybe kick back and be a second instead. It's a lot more variables. It makes it a lot easier to get deals done in Dynasty, but redraft's tough. I don't think I've seen really any real trades in redraft this
Yeah.
year. I've seen a few that were just kind of bench players for bench players, but
Right. How does the NFL have more action in its trade deadline than in our fantasy leagues? Fake football fantasy leagues, and the NFL has more drama during it. It's so crazy. It never has that happened. It's
I
been
think
a
it's because
while.
we don't have to pay our players millions of dollars for their services.
Well, they don't
You know,
ask, so
they don't ask. It's like every time you tweet at them, like, yeah, if you could just like
yeah,
put like a little Amazon wish list on their page for
be
like
great.
these fans, like, hey, if you want to tweet at me, buy something for my son.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, or like, hey, you want me to not fall down on the one and score instead? Buy me a new PS5. Look, sounds illegal, but I would partake.
I was gonna say that might get them a 2 game suspension. I don't know if that's worth
Right.
it for a PS5.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's time to buy or sell. I don't know where are you at right now? Where are your teams? Do you buy or sell right now?
I'm in good spots to buy. I've put some feelers out. I haven't got uh, any bites or really even any nibbles. I'd like a nibble at least, but what can you do? You send them out if nobody countered. I've had a few trades sent to me too, but nothing that's anywhere even close.
Yeah,
So it's
for
just
sure.
kind of I'm in a tough spot in a couple of leagues where I would like to, find a better RB2. I got a couple of leagues
Yeah,
where I got two tight ends, but for as thin as tight end felt for the first month of the year, now all of a sudden you
it's a
got
little more
guys, Cade
even.
Otton,
Yeah,
TJ Hawkinson came back. These guys that are, you're not sure if they're startable or not, but it doesn't move the needle necessarily for another team, like unless you're trading Trey
sure.
McBride or Travis Kelsey, and if you have
Yeah.
those guys, you don't want anything to do
Right.
with other
What's
tight
the,
ends.
what's the point of
So
trade? You might have it better be a blockbuster. Yeah, the tough part for me is I have Nico Collins on a bunch of my leagues. And the one thing we've talked about, and I should have known, we talked about injuries and how it's always probably worse than they seem, especially recently. And now IR doesn't mean anything. IR isn't like 4 weeks and they'll be back. I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey. It's week 10 and he may come back this week. Nico Collins has been gone 4.5 games, and you usually are like, IR is off, time to go. And it doesn't look likely, So it definitely
it's a minimum of 4
right.
games.
But usually it used to be like 4 games, that's plenty. And now teams are more cautious, as we are seeing this year more than ever. It's really interesting.
Well, and I think sometimes teams, when they first changed it to the 4 games, they weren't as good at judging how long injuries would take. So some guys would be put on IR, and then they could have come back a week before they were eligible to. And they're like, wait, why did we put them on IR? And so now there's sometimes where we have guys missing even 3 or 4 games that didn't go to IR. And it's like, well, why didn't they go to IR? It's like, well, we thought they'd be back, and they slowly meandered their way back. So it's tough to tell, especially with those soft tissue injuries. You think they're going to come back at a certain pace, and then they don't, and they're real easy to re-aggravate. So
I mean, Dak Prescott, his hamstrings off the bone, probably doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound good.
Sounds like,
I'm no doctor.
Yeah, that seems like an IR needy. I don't think he's going to be back in 2 to 3 weeks. Like that doesn't seem like a good time to trade for Jonathan Mingo. But it's.
Can he play quarterback?
Plan for next year. Yeah, so the plans for next year are already in the works. And really surprisingly too, this year running backs have been insanely durable.
I know.
We haven't seen any of them go down for the year, which is, wild. Knock on wood. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's almost inconceivable that it would go a whole season without a season-ending injury to a running back. We've seen, Pacheco was probably the worst we've seen. We've had a few other guys go to IR, but for running backs, no torn ACLs. Crazy.
I'm hoping. I think also offenses are running less plays right now still. The scoring has been up and down. There's a lot more platoons, so I think that's nice to see. But like a Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, like these guys are just powering through and having some great years. And usually you see one of those great years come cut short. So nice to see so far. And I'm hoping, and I'm sure they're hoping, their teams want their running backs to stay healthy. So we'll see what happens though. We still got, a little less than half a season left. And there could be still some really game-changing injuries or changes that we won't be able to foresee. So just as fantasy owners, I guess we got to get ready for that just in case.
Well, only a month left in the fantasy regular season. So it's a very different season for fantasy than NFL. Our playoffs are during their regular season. And so changes things up. Definitely have to start looking towards the end, start looking at the schedule, see what you need. You don't have buys in weeks 12 or 14. Time to go out and take advantage. You can offload some of those backups, some of those guys that, could be starting for somebody else that aren't starting for you. Lots of options out there. So take advantage of the deadline. And check when your deadline is. That's the most random thing in fantasy. Like some leagues have it as early as like Halloween, and some leagues it's like after Thanksgiving.
It's a weird balance because you don't want it to be too early because you want action still, and you don't want it to be too late where it may be a little egregious and people are just giving up. So you're trying to find a balance of ours is usually around Veterans Day, because we honor our troops and our trade deadline, but we try to make it so it's like right in the middle of the season or a little past the middle. That way we have enough sample and we can try to still give the chances to the lower level teams before the trade deadline. So it is a bizarre time, but if you're buying, man, DeAndre Hopkins, looks pretty good. I liked him when he started. I know a lot of people had said they're not sure with wide receivers how much does DeAndre Hopkins have in the tank, but last game I don't think that's a mirage. I think that again that Chiefs team will not die, and now they've added DeAndre Hopkins, and he's clearly going to be a huge asset going down the rest of the season.
He's their wide receiver 1 without anyone even coming close. Travis Kelce's going to be the next closest thing. He's going to get his targets, but he's only got so much left in the tank. I was watching him during that game, and he had 14 catches, but he only was tackled 4 times. Like this guy is like, as
He's
soon as
tired of being
somebody's getting
tackled.
close, as soon as someone getting close, he's going down like any sort of contact, and he's just dropping like a fly. Like he's
Yeah, he's probably like,
pretending
I
like
gotta
he's
still be
tough
all there when
and
Taylor wants to talk
durable,
to me.
but yeah, no, I mean, whatever that Swift diet is, it's not working for him. It's leaning him out. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna need to
The
keep that
mustache is gone.
right. The hair's falling out. Like he's gonna be done for this league in the next few years, and possibly after this year, really. But so that, I think, just really opens the door for DeAndre Hopkins to take more than enough targets. I mean, he's going to be seeing 10 targets a game. He's such a red zone threat. He's still a deep threat. And what we saw in that game is that he's still a lot more of a complete receiver than we thought. I think a lot of people thought he was done. I think we might start seeing some flashbacks to his Houston Texans days. I mean, I think he's still got that full route tree. Maybe not quite as fast as he used to be, but still fast enough to be a burner down the field. I think really the only thing that could hold him back is durability, because they're going to throw to somebody, and he's going to be the main guy. It's going to be him and Travis. And so I think you're looking at a guy that could be pushing towards wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. I mean, if he had been in Kansas City for the last few years and was just entrenched there, what's the difference between him and Davante Adams?
Yeah, no, I agree.
About that same age, the same.
That's the comparison. I think wide receivers are lasting longer. I think that there's different skill sets in wide receivers. Davante Adams was burning these young corners like off the line. They could not touch him. The footwork is still very important for wide receivers. That's why we're seeing like the Quentin Johnsons of the world not be able to take that next step. Like he takes a step one game and then he disappears another. There is something to be said about these veteran wide receivers that still bring it. And that's why I didn't think DeAndre Hopkins was gonna take a step back, just like a full step back yet. He's not the wide receiver, as you said, that he once was. But I mean, for him to hit that slant and catch that ball in the end zone, like that's a big sign for Patrick Mahomes, who wasn't throwing touchdowns until DeAndre Hopkins got there. So it's a good sign for Kansas City, and I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be huge down the line. I agree. Wide receiver 1 start. He's their only guy there that outside Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's not catching long passes anymore.
Yeah, he's going to be one of these guys that's worth buying high on right now, because I think his stock's just going to keep on climbing. And Chuba Hubbard, all year he's been right around an RB1, and everybody's just been waiting for Jonathan Brooks to come back and take over that job. And everyone's been trying to get rid of Chuba Hubbard, sell Chuba Hubbard. And now the Carolina Panthers go out and pay him like he's a starting running back. Hey, wait a minute. I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I think he's going to be the lead back. And they've seen something out of Jonathan Brooks that makes them think he's not a starting running back in the NFL, and at least not yet. I mean, it may be that it's just because of injury. He's not quite as fast as they were hoping, but I'm thinking more he's not picking up that playbook. He's not doing something that they expected him to be able to do, whether that's pass block, run routes, hit the correct hole at the correct time. I mean, they can say that they're, taking it slow, but when you sign a running back to a 4-year deal, clearly you don't have plans on your rookie taking over, and you paid him starter money. So that means you expect him to be a starter caliber player for you for the next few years. I don't think there's anything at this point that makes me think Jonathan Brooks is going to be anything more than a handcuff for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm curious. I agree. But then you flip it on the other side, right? Jonathan Brooks was a second-round pick. That's a high draft pick for a running back, a lot of stock into it. I think he was unbelievably talented in Texas, and there is something there. For me, it sounds like, Carolina's finally playing the long game, maybe, and that Jonathan Brooks, they don't want to rush him. They clearly didn't want to rush him. Then I do think pass blocking in the NFL is probably the biggest hurdle for running backs, if not the biggest hurdle. And so that's going to take some time. While 4 years on a contract probably means 2 years on a contract, right, when it's non-quarterback. So I do think that Jonathan Brooks still probably has a place there, but Chuba Hubbard has proven he is a starting running back in this league. So the Panthers snatched him up, and they finally are getting some stuff going right. So they're like, let's keep the guys that are helping us get some things right with Bryce Young. I do think, wow, yes, right now, it looks like Chuba Hubbard's position. I still don't think it's Jonathan Brooks is fully gone yet. I think they're still, while they invested in Chuba Hubbard, you can argue they invested in Jonathan Brooks as well. So we'll see. And look, 2 running backs is not a crazy thing. It happens everywhere. And with the line like the Panthers right now, I could see them splitting a little bit of time once both are healthy, whether that's this season or next. So we'll see. It's not good for Jonathan Brooks owners, but I don't think it's the end of the world just yet.
No, I think for Dynasty, like he's fine. He's going to be all right. But for redraft, I think now is the time to jump on Chuba Hubbard and jump off Jonathan Brooks, because it doesn't look like that's happening this season. We'll see when he finally makes his debut, but it was supposed to happen a month ago.
Yeah.
And then it was going to be that last week. And then it was going to be, 2 weeks ago. Then it was going to be last week. It just keeps getting delayed. And so we'll see how many touches he even gets. Yeah. He's supposed to be activated this week, but he may not play. There's just another bad sign. He's just bad signs all the way around. I think Chuba is the guy to own there. And, Chase Brown finally gets the opportunity to take over. We've seen Zach Moss go down to IR. He's done for the year. Probably. They haven't officially said that yet, but that's kind of all the speculation is neck injury on IR, trading for Khalil Herbert.
Yeah.
Back it up. Chase Brown looked good again Thursday night. So this is a guy that I think you go out and grab now while his value isn't quite to that high level. Everyone's kind of thinking, oh, they traded for Khalil Herbert. He's going to eat into those touches. I think they just need another running back. So I think Chase Brown is as talented as you could hope for in a running back, especially for that Bengals scheme. Like, he's not that true every down in between the tackles pounder, but he's electric with the ball in his hands. You get it in space. He's a good pass catcher. He's come along as a pass blocker. He really, there's a ton of runs that he's had this year where he's been just a step away from breaking just a huge long gain, and somebody trips him up at the ankles, shoelace type tackles. So I think he's close to really breaking out, and it's going to be an RB1 next season, but we'll see if it happens this season.
I like Chase Brown. I think it's really a really good sign that he's catching passes out of the backfield or running routes into the end zone, and they're targeting him in the end zone. I do think Khalil Herbert will take some of those carries away that maybe he could break more often. I think they want to preserve Chase Brown as well. I mean, they've already seen an injury to one of their players, but Chase Brown is that type of player that could win you a league this year if he gets hot at the end of the season. I mean, Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns 2 times this season already. That's a great sign for that offense moving. Even if you are a Jamar Chase fan, he'll be fine. He's still leading the league in yards, even though he didn't even catch a touchdown last time. But Chase Brown is, embedded in this offense, and that's a great sign that Chase Brown's first start by himself and that offense explodes. That means good things will happen if you start Chase Brown. So yeah, I agree. And the Khalil Herbert thing kind of dampens it. People are going out and spending a ton of fab money on Khalil Herbert like he's going to make a huge difference, but that then freaks out Chase Brown owners, and now is the time to pounce, in my opinion. I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, Charles Tillman looking good with James.
You love Charles Tillman.
Love me some Charles Tillman. The guy's got the size with speed, and now he's got the opportunity. So, I guess I can't stop talking about this guy. But even on a buy, still time to buy high. Take advantage of it, because he puts together another week or two of high-end production, and no one's going to want anything for him. He's going to be locked in as a wide receiver 2, maybe even a wide receiver 1 if he keeps going nuts. We'll see what Jameis can sling him.
Right. That's the thing, is Jameis, right? Like, yes, he threw 3 picks and he still was able to get into Cedric Tillman. But this is what we worry about with Jameis, right? Jameis is great when he's flying high, and he also has a ton of issues when he's down low. There's really no middle ground with Jameis. It's either you get this Jameis or you get this Jameis. So we'll see where Cedric Tillman lands. I am curious to see if Nick Chubb starts bringing off these runs. He doesn't look super healthy, as we've discussed. But if he starts becoming a little bit more effective, I wonder where that offense kind of moves. Jerome Ford kind of comes back, gets healthy. If they then start running heavier because of Jameis Winston and his greatness of throwing, really good at throwing picks. It's pretty bizarre how much he can throw picks. But I just think if they want to try to win, I don't know if they will, but if the coach is still trying to win, I'm curious if they'll start running a little bit more. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But it is a good time. A bye week is a perfect time to kind of go out and get someone like Cedric Tillman, because people have so many injuries right now that they need to get up space. Another wide receiver, speaking of that I like, that went way late in drafts and is starting to really come up. I really like Courtland Sutton. I think that right now he's a hot commodity, so it might be not as easy to get as a Cedric Tillman, but Bo Nix has finally found his wide receiver one. And sometimes he'll even throw it to Bo Nix, apparently. That's how he'll get some of his points too. So I think Courtland Sutton is a huge asset to that offense, and that offense is going now. It's firing. I know that team didn't look so hot against Baltimore, but I certainly think that Bo Nix is a lot better than people had given him credit coming into this year, and that is a contending team to at least try to get a playoff spot.
Yeah, I don't know why it took him so long to find him. He was the only guy there. They traded Jerry Jeudy in the offseason. Like, hey, It's your wide receiver. No, there's nobody else here. And
right.
No, there's really nobody here. Like, I don't care if you went to college with some of these guys. Like,
right.
No, there's nobody
He's
here.
Missing those guys wide open too. Hit Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, no, he's had some accuracy issues, that's for sure. But he's looked poised in the pocket. He's made good decisions with when to run the ball. He's done a good job limiting turnovers. Those are kind of some of the things that I expected to see from Bo Nix this year. And so he's doing a little bit better in that regard. The throws, the inaccuracy, it's going to take time. Like, that was his thing. You see a wide open guy, he's not always going to hit him. That's just kind of built into that. There's some guys that just struggle with that. Some of it's changing up the speeds a little bit. I think he throws too many line drives out there, put a little float on it sometimes, but he's been good. Sutton's been good. I think he kind of can disappear in tough matchups.
Right.
And so, you take advantage of a week where he's had a down week and go grab him. He's, more of that wide receiver 3 or 4, because he's not going to be consistent week in and week out. But he's a guy that could help you down the stretch, especially if they have good matchups or if you have injuries. Like, he's a solid player. He can definitely get it done for you.
Yeah, he can have big weeks. And I do think part of it is that Bo Nix is afraid to throw to Courtland Sutton on tough matchups. Like, sometimes you just got to get it to your number one wide receiver. We'll see if he develops that moving forward. So who knows? I like Courtland Sutton. He's a solid wide receiver and great value in the draft. So maybe something to keep on your bench in case something happens and whatnot. But we talked about Chuba Hubbard. So I know you're not a big fan of Jonathan Brooks. Are you going to sell him? Would you sell him?
I think he's definitely a sell low guy right now. I've got him on a squad, and I'll be looking at trying to trade him this weekend. Ideally hoping he plays a little bit, just enough to, maybe like 5 for 25 type of thing. So he looks like he's something, or maybe he pops a long one off, something like that. Get somebody a little bit excited, because I just don't see it. I don't see, I see him as being Chuba's backup, which means he's a running back 4 or 5, maybe even just a handcuff. Hard to know, but I just don't see them splitting carries. That offense isn't good enough to produce cheap touchdowns. Chuba's bangs them in garbage time, but that's going to get split up between the two of them. And then just what kind of player he is. I mean, obviously he didn't come back 100%. He didn't come back as just a super quick healer from the ACL. So I think it's just kind of going to be a lost season for him. If you can get something for him, I think now is as good a time as any.
Yeah, and that offense, like I said, is moving, and I don't think they want to mess with it right now. If they're, they just beat the Saints in a great comeback. Bryce Young finally looks like a NFL quarterback. He's getting blown up in the pocket, but he's staying in there and he's making throws. And Chuba Hubbard is part of that success right now. I agree. I just don't think. While I think Jonathan Brooks still has a future in this league, I just don't think they want to mess with it. There's not time to experiment with such a volatile young quarterback in Bryce Young. You need to give him as much confidence and as much stability as possible. And I don't think Jonathan Brooks factors into that the rest of the year.
Don't need him missing a pass block and
I mean, the last thing you want, right?
Like, and that was a horrible choice.
Yeah, and now
we really don't know what to do with our young guys. They're hurt and unable to
Speaking of injuries, T. Higgins, man, I'm like, don't know what to do with him. He's so good when he's on the field. That offense would be even better, and this dude cannot get on the field. It's crazy.
Yeah, started out with the hamstring, and sometimes that can lead to other injuries. Those soft tissues, you're trying to not run as hard on one leg, and it leads to an injury on the other. Just real easy to kind of have other injuries linger or come up when you're trying to rehab through it. So I think it's a good time to go ahead and trade him away if you can get solid value back. He's expected to be back next week, didn't play on Thursday. So I think the value's still there. He has produced when he's been on the field, but the injury risk is just super high. Even if he is healthy for a few weeks, could easily get re-injured come playoff time.
Yeah, and that's just the chance. If you can afford it, I say hang on to him, see what happens with his injuries, because he could be also a great asset. Remember when he was making those crazy plays during the playoffs? But if you can't afford it, you have to try to cut bait and try to sell him as, hey, he's not good right now, but maybe he can be for you later on, like some idiot like me who would be willing to try to take him on. You're like, he'll be fine later, maybe get to the top teams. But Courtland Sutton is just or not Courtland Sutton, T. Higgins is just he has not played more. He's missed more games than he's played this season. It's really hard if you're trying to contend right now to justify holding on to him.
The same thing with Chris Olave. I mean, this guy is out with a concussion. Some guys are already dropping him. Some people are expecting him to be out for the year. It's hard to know. I mean, with multiple concussions in the season, he'll probably be placed on IR at some point, miss at least 4 games. So then you're looking at really fantasy playoffs. So teams that think they're going to make the playoffs or are pretty sure they're going to make the playoffs, that's the kind of asset that they're going to be willing to trade for. I mean, I think you could get Courtland Sutton. I think you could get T. Higgins.
Yeah.
For him, like some of those guys. You could get a Tillman. I think you might be able to get Chuba Hubbard. Like those are the kind of players that maybe even a DeAndre Hopkins. Like I think those are all kind of fair trades if somebody is willing to take the risk. And there's just so much risk with Olave right now, and I just haven't seen the production be where we've all kind of projected it to be. He's a really good receiver, and if he was playing in Kansas City, he'd be a top 5, top 10 guy. I think there's no question. But the problem is he's in New Orleans, and by the time he gets back, it may be a lost season, and they might say, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and keep him out. There's no reason to play him. We're going for a high pick and trying to get a new quarterback, because that looks like what New Orleans is going to do at this point.
Remember when they started 2-0? Yeah, that was crazy. Real quick, who takes a bigger hit? I have a scenario. CeeDee Lamb without Dak Prescott, or Breece Hall now that he's got his buddies on the team and he's thriving? Who takes the bigger hit production-wise?
I think it's CeeDee Lamb, mainly because I think their season is kind of lost, whereas the Jets are on that upward trajectory. And if they can reel off 2 or 3 wins, they can realistically get completely back into the thick of things and be in it for the duration. Whereas if Dak's out for 4 weeks or more, I think at some point CeeDee Lamb's going to stop caring. Some of the rest of the guys are going to stop caring. Yeah. I mean, McCarthy could get fired at any point. This could just turn into a lame duck season real quick. So I think CeeDee Lamb is a guy that will try to produce at times, but I could also see him just mail in games that are done too.
I think real quick, if you have Breece Hall, for me, if you want to sell, I think it's right now. Just if you have a bad feeling, this was a guy who everyone was saying might be the number 1 running back this season and just has not shown up. So maybe it's time to sell him.
Yeah, it's kind of been a lost season. It doesn't look like he's going to return investment at all. Maybe he's still a low-end RB1, but kind of falling close to RB2. And if, his backup there, Braylon Allen, picks up the pace, he could turn into real RB2 or 3. So it can go downhill quick in the NFL. You project these young players to take the next step, and sometimes that next step is backwards. So
a couple of players that you inspired me to try to go get last week. Khalil Herbert, I think hold on to him. See if you can just see what you get. If you got him last week and listen to Jeff with the G, you can really benefit just holding on. There's no, no risk here if you can hold on, see what happens in the first. Not maybe today, but next week. I like Cedric Wilson. I think that we talked about Olave. They need someone there. Who knows how long Olave is going to be out? I just like him. And then Gus Edwards, another IR guy. He looks like he might return this week. Before he got hurt, he was getting double-digit carries. I don't think J.K. Dobbins has the is coming off that injury still. People forget he may need a couple of breaks here and there. So I like Gus Edwards coming off IR. He's still not owned in the high percentage ownage in leagues.
Yeah, he's off to a kind of a slow start when people expected him to start. So he's kind of the true handcuff for J.K. Dobbins probably for the rest of the year. The rookie, not so great in his limited work there in LA. But yeah, I've got Mac Jones. Looks like Trevor Lawrence is going to be out possibly.
Oh, I thought you said he looks like Trevor Lawrence, and I thought you were going to stop there.
Yeah, no, I mean it'd take 2 to 3 years to look like Trevor Lawrence. So you gotta really grow that out.
Right.
There's only a couple of sunshines out there slinging the ball all over the place. Accuracy's never really their thing, but Mac Jones is kind of the opposite of Trevor Lawrence. He's not going to throw the deep ball. He's not going to run with it. He's just going to take those little easy completions. Guys are open. He's going to hit them. He's not going to overthrow. He's not going to throw the ball too hard. You're not going to have to worry about balls bouncing off of guys because he just chucked it in there too fast. No, he's going to be more like Jamie Moyer out there. Just put it on a guy.
Great reference.
If a defender jumps in front of him, well, like the receiver should have come back to the ball. I don't know what to tell you there. Mac Jones, if he gets an extended look, definitely super flex. Obviously, don't go and add in him if you just have one quarterback. But in super flex, every quarterback could matter, and if it's an extended absence for Trevor Lawrence, possibly surgery. So, if that happens, then he's a quarterback. He'll be playing. And they got solid weapons there, and they're going to be throwing a lot because they just don't have the defense. Eric All has moved to IR for the season, tore his ACL for the Bengals, was looking good at tight end. Going to be Gesicki's job for the rest of the year, but Eric All was looking really good, and he was drafted a little bit later than Ben Sinnott and some of these other tight ends that we haven't seen much production from. So I think next year Eric's going to be a pretty solid tight end for the Bengals, always a passing offense there with Burrow.
Just look at Gesicki. Like, look what he did last game. Like, that's all. That could be a potential, right?
Yep. Thursday, another good game for Gesicki. So, and then Keaton Mitchell, finally making it back. He's pretty healthy. We'll see if Derrick Henry ever lets him see the field, but he's healthy and he's a running back. So
he was good last year. He was fast. If I remember.
Got some electricity to him, so we'll see how fast he is coming off the ACL. But more of a dynasty stash if he got dropped by owners, and maybe he's somebody that becomes available in the next few weeks. Now that he's not able to sit on their IR, it might be more likely that they end up cutting him because Derrick Henry is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. Those are good little young players there. Outside of Mac Jones, we'll see. But all right, looks like we got to start the show.
He's young. What are you talking about? He's still young.
I guess he looks like he's like our age, 40 years old at this point. He's aged a lot in New England after those seasons. Remember him?
Bald. Isn't he bald now? I think he looks like he's bald.
I feel like athletes like bald. I don't know. It's weird. Us shorter guys still have a lot of good hair. So I think it's
mostly the gingers.
Yeah. All right. Ready?
Yep. Showtime.
All right. Let's do it.